Great to see you here in part 3 of lesson 6. Here we're going to look in detail into the different steps, and we also link some specific information to these steps. Now, first of all, we have the initiation step, and here we are creating the charter, identify basically the key stakeholders. It's not possible to identify all of them, and basically the charter is a high-level description of the project. No technical information there. You can get information from the business case. You will find there the business goals, the estimated cost, financial performances, risks and assumptions. So there is a lot of information from the business case, and you can also, based on the information that you have a preliminary identification of the stakeholders. It's typically a short document, but short is relative. It depends on the complexity. But typically 4 or 5 pages, you have a front page, you have a table of content, and you may have some attachments or some annexes. What's important here is to understand what project business documents we're going to use. And I already spoke about the project business case, which is the main element that we have. The second document that we have is the project charter, which is in fact the translation of the business case into the project specifications. We find the project management plan, which is basically the financial and risk overview of the project. And what is also important is that we have a benefits management plan where we identify all the benefits related to the project. So all these things come together. These are the business documents that we need at the beginning of the project. Now let's have a look a little bit more in detail. We have the business case. We have typically a business case, economic feasibility study, the validity of the benefit. It's the basis for the future project management decisions and actions. And it's something that we have to take into account during the entire project. Now, the project sponsor is accountable for development and maintenance, and the project manager, will provide recommendations, and it can be made at project or program level. So when we have more complex projects or programs, it's made on that different level. Now, when we look at the project benefits management plan, it's documented explanation defining the processes for creating, maximizing and sustaining the benefits provided by the project. So basically that's the business case and the benefits management plan. We know the project management plan, we know the charter, but these are the documents that I wanted to take out of it because they are a little bit different from charter and project plan. When we look at the business needs, what is prompting the need of action? Why do we need to do the project? It's one of the elements we have to have in the charter. Why do we do this? Then we have the statement documenting the business problem or opportunity. What is the problem and how do we solve it? Or what is the opportunity? And what business value do we get? What's the outcome of this project? We look at the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders that will be affected by the project or can affect the project? So you find already a lot of information here. And finally, you have an identification of the scope. In a business case, typically, there is a high-level scope statement that you can use. Now, in the business case, we look also at the analysis of the situation, and we have to look at the organizational strategies, the goals and the objectives. We're doing this for an organization. It's not just for fun. So basically, we have to comply with these. The second thing, we have to find the root causes of the problems or the contributors of an opportunity. So why do we do this? What are the contributors? What are the root causes? We also look at the gap analysis of the capabilities. So we have to see what do we have and what do we need. And the gap analysis will tell us what we have to supply to eliminate the gap. Identification of the known risks. What are the risks we're going to expect? We also have to look at the critical success factors. It's very important to define success very early in the project, and that will also be part of the charter where we have to define when is our project a success. And it's very important to define it very early in the project because then you have basis for evaluating the success of the project later. If you don't have it, well, at the end of the project, you may say, whatever happens, you can start discussing, is this project successful or not? I had cases like that when the people stated, that is what you have to do. I did it and somebody else didn't agree with it. And I say, yeah, but this is what they asked me. They didn't ask me to do what you are asking me. That's something different. If you don't like what I did, don't talk to me. Talk to the people who defined what I had to do, and I did it. My project was successful. It's not what you need, but you had to define what I had to do. I gave my advice in the beginning. Nevertheless, people said, that's what you have to do, nothing more or less. And then we have the decision criteria also, because later we will have to make decisions, we will have to have changes, we have all these things that we have to do, and we have to take all of them into account when we are working on the project. So let's look at the criteria categories. We look at requirements. So we have to do this, we must do this. It will not be possible to resolve the problem or the opportunity. What is desired, it's nice to have. It's not a deal breaker, so you can have some desired elements, and then you have some optional elements. It's nice to have, but not essential. So we have to identify these different criteria. And basically, to have a successful project, we have to have all those elements that are required. That's the basis. If you have some desired elements that can be included, it will be nice because it will give more value. The customer will be happier, but it's not necessary to succeed with the project. And of course, optional elements may have to decide it later. Will you have, let's say, a different type of finishing of the walls or things like that? There are different elements that you can consider, but be aware that you have to look at the categories required, desired, and optional. With the business case, we have different options. First of all, do nothing. It means that what we did, we will not follow the business case. We will say that the existing situation will be maintained for any reasons, could be risk, could be financial. We also have minimal work. Minimal work means that we are focusing on the key elements to remediate the problem. And we can also do more than minimum. So we have some additional things that we are going to do. And that's very important to see what are the different options that we select. All has to be decided in the business case. Now, do nothing, it means we have to find some other way to invest our money. A company that's not investing the money properly is not managing the money properly. Now, we'll also look at the planning process step. That's the first step that comes after initiation. And we have the different steps. I mentioned them before. So we have the requirements, scope, WBS, and so on. And we go through the 7 steps here. We have roles and responsibilities, dependencies, project scheduling, Gantt, resources evaluation and resolving issues, project cost and budget, risk management. And those will be also the chapters after the midterm. So basically we will look at those different elements. Some of them will be combined, and that will be the topics of the following lessons. And when you follow these steps, basically at the end, you will have your project plan, you will have all the information that you can summarize in the plan. Now, step 9 is about execution, monitoring, control. We look at the process during execution. We create the deliverables. We identify what we have to work on at a specific time. What are the expectations? We also look at the controlling, because doing work without controlling is not really something we should do. We have to verify, are we doing the work? Are we on time? Are we providing what we promised? All these things have to be monitored. Otherwise, we have no idea where the project will be going. And we may end up in a situation where finally nobody is happy, nobody knows what's going on, and that should be avoided. No monitoring, controlling will certainly lead to catastrophe. We have the closing, project order plan, and here I will go a little bit more in detail, because we will not be talking about these elements in this course. So it's the last step. We have all the activities closed, the approved scope has been realized, the project work is finished, and sometimes people end that the project is already finished here. Basically, it's not true because we still have to do some important work. In the closing step, we look at closing procurements, lessons learned, project review, saving documentations, and so on. But let's have a look at that in the following slides with a little bit more detail for these different steps. We look at the project documentation and the as-built plans. Now, typically, we have a clear definition of the project, but there may be changes. For example, we had in AT&T, we had communication projects, we had communication between different sites, and in the contract it said we have this type of router, but we didn't specify the exact type. We had different categories of the router, but we didn't say exactly which type of the router it was, what is the registration number of the router, what are all the elements related to the data connectivity, the software, the addresses, things like that. So when we have that, we have to look at these elements. We have to find that later when we want to upgrade and when we want to do something with the installed project. Of course, when there is a problem, the support will have to be able to identify the problems, to identify where the problem is, and when we do changes, we also have to know where to find the different informations. So basically, the handover to the customer or to the operations is done by what we call the as-built plans. We provide all the finished information to the customer or to the operations department. Lessons learned is also very important. We learn about projects, we gather knowledge, we learn lessons, and basically companies increase their value by increasing their knowledge. That's basically the value of a company when you're working in project management or in any area. Mercedes has value because they have engineering rules, they have engineering experience, they have project experience and things like that. All these elements, each project gets the company or the organization, but also the people, new experience and knowledge. Lessons learned is when we find some solution during the project, we find some ways to deal with it, and basically we can use that to improve project performance. And project performance can be shown, typically we say it's in closing, but we don't have to wait till we come to closing. We can do it before. So we have weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings when we find out some new elements, some new items that we can use. We can in fact basically share that already on the meetings, and immediately the people can use the information, can use the knowledge at that moment. So it's very important to understand that everything we learn should be shared during the closing step, but we can also share it earlier. We can share it with the people so that the knowledge, the lesson that has been learned, can be applied immediately in the project. Do not wait till the end, share it, certainly when there are some other problems that may be resolved by the experience, by the lesson that you learned. Project handover, it's very important that we have to hand it over to the, let's say, to the customer or internal operations. Now we have to see that all has been closed, that we have, let's say, the necessary documentation, and that documentation will also be the baseline for future improvement and updates and changes. Another element that's typically a problem at the moment of closing of the project are the outstanding contracts and issues. All those contracts have to be closed. So if you don't do that, you can create problems during the lifetime of the project. And I remember one company, they were doing some upgrades of data lines. Basically, there was an existing data line, the data line was upgraded, And what happened is that they did not cancel the old data line. So basically they upgraded to 2 megabit, and the old data line of 512 kilobit was still there, and the company kept on receiving invoices. Basically, where do you have to put that invoice? You don't know, and it's working on the profitability of your project. Now, you have to close all these things. You have to see that there are no leftovers, and at that moment you can release the team. Sometimes people came to me and they said, can I have the people? I'm working on a project. Once you give the people away, you normally don't have the right to have them anymore. When you have a trust with the people, it may work, but basically be careful. Be sure that all the work has been done, that you don't have to do anything anymore once you hand over the people, once you close the project. If there are still things to do, you will have to go and beg, and you may run into a lot of problems. The moment that everything has been transferred to the customer or to operations, at that moment, all these things should have been resolved, and the project can be closed and the project team can be released. So that was the third part of lesson 6. Let's have a look at the fourth part in the next video. Thank you and bye-bye.